Hello, hello. Can you hear me? I'm here. Hello. Can you hear
Hey,
me?
hey, 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 hey,
Hello, hello, hello.
Mr. Steve Wytas. How you doing, man? Hello, everyone. Hi, guys. We're just having a little bit of tech issues with Steve. His Wi-Fi is a bit cutting off. Steve's at the studio right now at Dirt Floor Productions, which is out in the woods. A beautiful cabin, by the way. And I guess the Wi-Fi is not doesn't seem to be that great over there. We'll just wait for him to get back. Only take a few minutes. So whenever you guys are ready, shoot us some questions. And oh, there we go. Okay. Hey, Saeed. How you doing, man? Hey, Rami. What's happening, brother? Cool. So we're live right now and waiting for Steve. So just to give you a quick brief history of Steve's been around this industry for a really long time, and he was in broadcast. He's recorded a bunch of great bands, and now their Dirt Floor Productions is with NPR as well, doing some of their productions. So yeah, he'll be with us in a short minute. And sorry, give me a second. Where is he?
Streaming live.
There
Hello,
we go.
we're
There we go.
back.
Steve is with us right now.
You got me.
Are you there?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm here. Can you hear me? I
Yeah,
am
I can
talking
hear
live.
you
I
loud
am
and clear.
live. Can you hear me?
So hey guys, there's Steve for you. So we got a couple people on board, Rami and Saeed. How you guys doing? So Steve, how you been?
I don't want to move because my internet connection is unstable, it's telling me. The Zoom meeting is telling me that, which we're at Dirt Floor Recording Studio. So we're in a log cabin on a mountain. So we're lucky we have electricity up here.
All right, that's good. Well, we got you right now.
Can you hear me?
I can
So
hear
you
loud.
can hear me, right?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Okay, good.
Can you
I
hear me?
got you.
All right, great, fantastic. So
Yes,
Steve,
I can. Yes.
this is intro for the people who are watching as well. It'd be great if you just give us a quick, nice, well, it doesn't have to be quick, but just a cool brief history of how you got started in this industry. Since you were telling me how you went to college and ran the radio station over there, and let us know about that. So tell us about Steve.
Well, I think I was bitten by the music bug probably about 1977, 1978, with a friend of mine who was playing guitar and said, "Hey, I need someone to play bass. Can you
Right,
play bass?" He says, "It's only four strings. You don't have to learn so much." So I said, "I could do that." And then I started taking bass lessons. And at one point, I said to my bass teacher, my music teacher, uh, I bought a Van Halen album and I said, "I want my bass to sound like this." And he
right,
said,
like the guitar.
"You have to learn how to play first before you can make it." Right. But I wanted a sound of the bass. I didn't really care what notes I was playing. I wanted the sound.
Right,
So, I got involved in that and then started, my dad had a stereo system with a cassette deck, and then he got a new cassette deck. And then I was able to buy a little Radio Shack mixer and go between cassette decks, and then to a 4 track, then to a Fostex 8 track, and then a 16 track and a 24 track, and then ADAT machines and DA88s and Pro Tools. And, I've seen about every format
right.
except for the
So,
big digital stuff. Like, ugh, never got around to buying a Mitsubishi machine. Thank God.
when you got to that point, basically, like how, I mean, you got to all this gear. Give us a bit more detail on, or when did you actually delve into this whole production in a lot more serious note, rather than just how, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, in high school, a friend of mine, Jason Sostek, had a lot of keyboards, and we started doing an electronic duo thing. And in the 80s, it was like, MIDI. Wow. We were doing
Yeah,
stuff on a Commodore 64 computer,
I
and
remember.
we had, an S900 sampler. And I remember I was working in a hotel. I was, in the kitchen. I just remember every time I would get paid on Saturday, I just sign the back of my check, pay to the order of Center Music in Newington, Connecticut. and they would just get all of my check, and I would just put it towards a mixing board, towards a microphone, towards drum machines, whatever. I mean, I had a TR 909 that I, bought years ago and probably threw it away.
It's probably worth a bit of coin right now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, there's so much stuff that I've thrown away or
Yeah.
sold or whatever. So, and then getting involved, then going to college, I joined the radio station, and from there was no looking back. I mean, the program director was talking to music labels, and then I was in the engineering department, and we were doing, repairs and routing things and wiring and making sure, everything was technically correct. So I got a lot of technical skills from working in the college radio station, as well as exposure to a lot of music. This was 1984 to 1989,
Yep.
with a lot of music that was happening then. So a lot of my musical tastes were just expanded enormously in the 80s. And then from there, after getting out of college, I started doing some corporate stuff and doing, bands that wanted to record with me because they knew I had some equipment. And from there, built a studio, opened up a commercial studio in 1993 that had a 10-year run, doing regional acts and doing corporate work. And then I kind of got out of that. I mean, at the time, everyone was getting Pro Tools, so you either had to be a really big studio or in
Right.
your basement. And I was like a mid-level studio,
Right.
Neve Studer room in Hartford, Connecticut. Not too much, not a lot of business, towards the end of the 90s. And I just saw that, the writing was on the wall. It's you either have to be really big or really small. And it's funny now, almost 20 years later, you have to be in the middle. You can't be really big or you can't be really small.
Right.
So
Right.
it's kind of come around, and I've seen a lot of work, in studio work, and as well as broadcast television and corporate and commercial and live sound reinforcement.
Right.
So I've got a history in a lot of different things.
So you mentioned you built your first studio in 1993,
hmm
and you say you had a Neve and a Studer running it?
Well, when I opened the studio, I had an Audio Arts Wheatstone console, which is still in use today at
Okay.
another studio in Connecticut. He bought the Audio Arts Wheatstone, which actually came out of a place called Sonolist, which is now Power Station New England in
Okay.
Connecticut.
Oh
And
yeah, sorry for all the viewers. Just to let you know, we didn't mention Steve's out in Connecticut, and all this history has been happening in Connecticut, or did you move from one state to another state?
I've just always been in Connecticut. I haven't moved, just right here between
It's a
Boston and New
state.
York, stuck here.
I've been there a few times. Yeah.
But right now, between Boston and New York is a good place to be. Yeah.
Well, yeah. There you go.
People are going to be moving out of New York as soon as they can, I think. I
And
don't know.
how did you see the transition from moving from a large format, I suppose, console? I don't know the console you're talking about.
Oh, it was the Audio Arts board. Yeah. So after that, I think I started saving up for a Neve, which I got a 5116 used broadcast console.
Right.
And that teaches you a lot about how expensive these things are to run.
Right. I mean, I could see that lovely board behind you right now.
I've learned how to recap that whole thing. I could take the whole, I've got the technical and that's the only way you can do it now, because it's very expensive to have these things repaired.
Yeah, I'm sure. And there's like a far and few people who actually know them really well, isn't it?
Right.
Well, it depends where you are, I suppose. But yeah, that's
right. Yeah.
fantastic. So did you ever work with before Pro Tools came out, it was called Sound? What was it called?
Well, in 1991, I was working at a corporate AV facility in Hartford, and they had Sound Tools. This was probably about Sound Tools in 1989, 1990, and we were recording everything on DAT at the time.
Right.
And we were recording voiceovers and little music jingles and editing, like recording it on DAT and taking it into Pro Tools or Sound Tools, editing it and putting it back to DAT. And I was, wow, that's incredible.
Just nice.
So I got a Sound Tools 2 system in 1991.
Right.
That was on a 2-track in, 2-track out, stereo in, stereo out.
Right.
And there was a company called OSC that made software called DEC. And DEC software used the Digidesign hardware to make it 4 in, 4 out. Okay. And that became the stepping stone for Pro Tools, which Digidesign bought OSC. They took the software, they made it Pro Edit and Pro DEC.
Yeah.
Then it became Pro Tools. So I was right at the entry level of Pro Tools. the
That's
brand name Pro Tools.
Yeah, that's so funny because I moved back to Dubai from the US in 2000 and I opened up the studio here and Digi 001 came out that time. Do you remember that?
The
And
double
I
O
was
one, yeah.
001 and I bought that system. And I remember when I got it, it came with a VHS tape with the owner of Pro Tools, and he's walking around his house talking about Pro Tools and how lovely it is. It was a weird video. It was lavish, like half an hour. I just wanted to understand what this thing was, right? And I remember he had percussions everywhere. And he had his like dashiki where anyway, it was a funny video. I was like, what the fuck is this? But yeah. But I kicked off and I can't remember if it was a 4 in, 4 out. I don't remember. But I have to say I learned a lot from it, having my own setup and run. And that time was so expensive. Like a setup like that now would cost nothing.
Okay,
Nothing.
it's tough for people to wrap their head around my first hard drive that I bought in 1991. So my first hard drive is
How many?
about the size of a toaster. Okay, just consider a 2-slice toaster. You put your toast in. It's about that size. It was a SCSI 2 unit. It was, think about this, 1 gig.
That's a lot for that time, too.
1 gig. All right, so you can't even buy a little stick drive now that's smaller than 16 gigs. Okay?
Yeah, right.
1 gig was $2,200 American dollars in 1991. So that's about $7,000 today.
Yep.
And you can only work on one project at a time. When I was doing a mastering project, you'd load it on from a DAT tape, work on it, and load it back to the DAT tape.
Yep.
Then you have to load another set. I mean, but that kind of stuff and struggling and working, cutting 24-track tape and doing things the hard way and having to do real tape flange.
Right.
I wouldn't do it anymore. I don't want to buy us a tape machine anymore, but those kind of things help you appreciate the tools that we have today that, I just got a new plugin called Snare Buzz. If you get sessions in that don't have, to mix that don't have a bottom snare. I mean, I used to trigger a white noise with a noise gate. But now you can just put this plugin on and add bottom snares. It's brilliant.
Well, yeah, I guess there's many ways to do it. Yeah, that's great. I'll go check that out. I have a well-recorded sample of snare bottom and top. So when I don't have a snare bottom, I just slap that in there and just add it in. Put a bunch of 8K on an SSL plug and good to go.
Right. Or or you can. I have Slate Trigger, which we have a nice drum set at the studio at Dirt Floor, but sometimes if stuff comes in, it's poorly recorded and you have to use a plugin called Drum Leveler to kind of extract the transient out of it and trigger it. There's all kinds of great tricks now, which, I mean, you used to have to use a digital delay with a sampler, with a sample in it and trigger it and put it to tape.
Many ways to skin a cat, I suppose. Like I've been getting sessions in with a lot of program drums, right? And some of them do sound good, but it's like whoever I tell who is programming drums, like I've done it for 1 hour. I was like, you know what, I'm going to make an album, program the drums, make them sound like real live drums. And I used BFD3, which is a great sounding one.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they've recorded in Ocean Way Studios through an Eve console and they really sound good, but you missed the human element. So I sat there for each song for 1 week after I programmed it, is moving every little bit, like drag it behind the time, rush it, and the velocity is going on just to at least give it that human touch. And I was like, you know what? I'll never do this again because all my albums I recorded they were all live. But it's tedious work. And now I get sessions in that are programmed drums, and I don't know, like there's something always missing. Anything programmed, unless it's intentionally programmed to be something that's different. But I feel like a lot of the program stuff is great. It sounds great, but you miss that element that, that I want errors. I want mistakes. I want something that sounds like shit in parts of it, make it smooth. And
well, a lot of that,
I still have to work with it. So it's fine, and I compress it. I put some saturation on it, all of this stuff just to give it that at least room vibe, because you don't get that room sound. So you take the whole drum sound, you run into compression, you crush the crap out of it, and, have a room sound there or something,
Well, that's part of my philosophy is if it sounds bad, make it worse and it'll be better.
Last time, yeah, there you go.
But even if you're doing programmed drums, just to have a if you program the kick snare rack floor, do a real hi-hat, just play along with a real hi-hat if you have that, or
Yeah,
real
if you have
cymbals.
that. But if
A
you don't,
ride cymbal,
yeah,
it adds, everything to it. And, that snare buzz uh, plugin I was talking about, if you like, the problem with if you're replacing rack and floor toms or even kick drums, you miss that room in the room sound. The snare is vibrating, so
right.
those samples are too clean. So you need to, if you use that snare buzz on a tom and just add a little bit of that bottom snare, because you could hear that stuff in a real drum set.
Yeah.
In a program drum set, you don't hear that. It's too perfect. It's too perfect.
But this is why I got BFD3. That was one of the main reasons. I don't know if you've ever used it, because even if I trigger like the samples, I'll load it into that, and what it does, it creates another channel with, it's called the ambient channel, which is
The
basically room
bleed,
mic.
yeah.
Yeah, and the bleed, exactly. And I use that a lot in there just to do that effect as well, which is great. I mean, I've only used BFD3. I don't know about the others, but I'm sure they all have it.
I
But
think we have BFD Lite, which
yeah,
it was okay. I mean, we primarily use it as a click track.
right,
Instead of the MPC click, we'll just put a kick drum. Boop, boop,
right.
boop,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But even we just picked up the art. I don't know if you use Arturia.
Yeah, I've used it. I mean, I haven't used it heavily. I've dabbled with it.
Okay, their V collection. We're just blown away by the Moog and all the components of that. The keyboard
Right.
collection that they have is so spot on. I mean, it's scary. In fact, there's a great piano plugin called the Garriton CFX. I don't know if you know that.
I don't know that one. No.
I didn't know it either. Well, we have a piano here at the studio, and our piano tuner the guy was a beta tester for the CFX software made by
Okay.
Garriton. So he's up here tuning the piano. He goes, "Well, why don't you guys just get CFX? You wouldn't have to have me come up here." He's talking himself out of a job. So it
Right.
went on sale, and we picked it up, and it's the Abbey Road piano.
Okay.
I mean, you can hear, like pedal damping noise, and the amount of control now is just off
Right.
the charts. It really is incredible.
Do you know what's good? I just tried the piano is the new Luna, the Luna U Audio DAW that came out. I mean,
Right.
for me, honestly, it's just another DAW. It doesn't have I/O. There's a lot of things it doesn't support. But besides that point, I'm not gonna go off on that. They got their piano. I think they called it the Raven, and it was on trial. I was like, you know what? Let me give this a try. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic. Like I would just get that software just for that piano sound for some reason.
Right. Yep.
But there's obviously nothing better than having a real live acoustic piano. But we
Well,
got
it's fun to have the real acoustical. We have artists who come in, they want to play the Wurlitzer because it has a feel to it, or to
100%.
play the beat. There's a feel to that
Yeah.
that you can't get out of a plugin or out of a MIDI controller. And the piano, if you want to use the piano, it's got to be tuned, and artists have to pay for that. But just to have a real piano in the studio, just to sit down with a guitarist or a vocalist and work things out live,
With a
uh,
great sounding room.
it adds a lot to have a real piano. It takes up a lot of space, and the piano's in our kitchen here at Dirt Floor.
Oh, nice.
Not many people have a grand piano in their kitchen. We don't have a table, we have a piano.
So do you have dinner on it and stuff?
No, we eat out on the porch.
All right, cool. Well, I mean, the reason why I brought this topic up, I mean, obviously in today's world, there's a lot of people who don't have live rooms, who don't have live acoustic pianos, and that's why we brought these up. It's like, okay, if you want to try it, try this. We got a couple of comments over here. We have Matthew Moulton, and he's like, I started. That must be a friend of yours.
He's a local guy, yeah.
Yeah, nice. He's like, I started when digital recording was the norm in 2001. Yeah, we just talked about that Digi 001 and all that. And then he's like, Slate Trigger is good stuff. Saved me from some very poorly tuned kits. Yeah, fair enough. And then we got Brent here. Hey, Brent, what's going on? He's like, the V collection is really special. Oh, he's like, oh, you guys cut out.
We cut out. I'm not watching the YouTube stream because.
Yeah, you don't need to. I'm
okay.
Just to ease off on it. I'll be reading all of this stuff anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to do things right now, and there's so many easy ways to do things right now. Coming back on this topic, example like pianos or drums or whatnot. Now here's my philosophy on that. I mean, we said if it sounds like shit, then make it sound shittier, which is great. But you know, I've gotten a couple of mixes where, you know, even if you program stuff in and all that, you can cut me off, correct me if I'm wrong, but I still feel like, okay, you programmed this, great, but you didn't work on it. Yeah, everything is in time, everything's grooving, but you know, we mentioned it's all about the little details in performance, and this comes back to, again, performance is king in anything. Remember, we were just talking about you. Can you tell us about the story example of the girl who came in and you're trying to figure out what mic she needed because she had all these lip cracking things? Like,
Right,
what
right.
was the story again?
Well, it's performance, but also if you are, I mean, well, the issue was we're in the middle of a mix now for an album, and listening to her vocal, you know, I have the ingredients in front of me. So now I've got to bake the cake and I got to put some frosting on it. So the ingredient of her vocal, I think it was recorded on probably a U87 into a 1073 into an LA2A.
So
It
you
had
got
all,
already tracked in.
it's yeah. When we record things at the studio, you know, that's how it was done. I wasn't here to record it. Eric probably recorded. We might have had it might have been a fast session that was jumping around, or like something was set up from another thing, and she did the vocal anyway. So it was very sibilant, crispy, a lot of mouth noises. So I have to take the ingredient that I have and try to make it, you know, she said she wanted it to sound warmer. The performance was good. She said she could redo it. I said, let me see if I can, you know, I used Soothe 2, which is a great plugin by Oak Sound.
Right.
And I think I used like Isotope Decrackle to get rid of some of those lip smacks and little, you know, and it just, she didn't like it. I said, well, then if you have time, she goes, I can recut the vocal in 15 minutes.
Easier.
You know,
That's what
in a mix session, when you hear that,
yeah.
oh, there, you know, just you want to put the emergency brakes on a good mix. Just say, I got to dub something in.
Yeah.
So we put her in front of an AEA 44, into a Focusrite Producer Pack ISA 430, into a TubeTech CL1B.
Nice.
And she goes, that's what I'm looking for.
Right. You just need the right ingredients for it.
Right. So, and I think, you know, if you use, you know, her voice for this song needed something a little more smoky or a little more mellow.
Right.
But I think at the time it was, you know, they were just tracking vocals and didn't really have time to shift. And after you listen to the rough mix, you think, oh, well, you know, I could have done it this way. I could have done it that way. So to use the opposite microphone based on what you're hearing, like if
you got a ribbon for that, right?
So we have the AEA 44 ribbon, which is a brilliant microphone. And in fact, the one that we have here, Wes Dooley made it for me after I attended an AES conference. He used to repair these the RCA 44s. He had all the parts, and he put all the parts together and made a new microphone. And I said, that's brilliant. I said, I'll take one. So
how much would it cost you?
I have no, it wasn't. There's no serial number on it. It wasn't even made. It was kind of like a prototype. And
send me his contact. Because I would love to use that on a kick drum as well, by the way, a 44.
Get this great mouse pad.
Do you know what I'm into? Like, I've been watching, and I'm really curious about the AEA, the stereo ribbon, the big one they're using for overheads and rooms. Right. That looks really interesting. Have you tried that one?
I have not tried that one. Most of the things that I have used, I own. Right. Or there used to be a dealer in Connecticut. His name was Buzz Turner, and he was a Neumann and Sennheiser dealer, and he would always say, "Oh, we have this new microphone, this new thing.
Right.
I'll send it up to you." And I would always say, no, because it's easier for me to write a check than to package the whole thing back up and send it. So I ended up getting a bunch of Neumann microphones.
That's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, come on.
But it's great. I'd love to. If you know, the thing is, out here we're very limited on gear. So I mean, I have to order everything. And do you remember at times on Facebook I would ask you a few questions about, have you tried that? Because I don't get to try them here. I have to sit there and for hours and days listen to all this gear review, not the reviews, but listen to their demos and stuff like that. And obviously with YouTube, you don't really get the full fidelity in your headphones, so you have to kind of make it out, and then you plunge in and you buy it, right? And
Right.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I made the right choices for what I needed. And but when you're out there and you have these options, that's fantastic. Like Vintage King, I got a good connection with him. And
Mhm.
Alex, the guy working, he's a great guy. He's like, look, we can send you all the unit, but you have to pay for all the shipping. The shipping's bloody expensive. And I was like, you know what?
Right.
No, just keep it there because I'll just like you, I'll end up keeping it and end up,
Right.
let's we got a couple of things here. I got a friend of mine, Brent. He's an audio engineer out here in a production house. He's fantastic, and I'm shit at soldering. If you look at the labyrinth of wires I have behind this rack, which I'm sure you know, he
Oh,
helped
you
me.
don't want to see behind the console.
Yeah, I'm sure he helped me solder everything in there. Like, dude, thank you. And he's like, he's part of the community here, and he's loving it, and he's saying that's great that you guys are always doing this. And he's like, I always wanted to try an AAR44. Yeah, that's what he's saying. And Matthew's saying, favorite mic pre's, Neve, SSL, or API. Me, I like API pre's with the SSL EQs. Also for drum shells, FET compression, or optical compression. Do you want to answer that one?
That's so which mic we
So
use different
basically,
mic pre.
yeah, exactly. Different mic for different flavors. So he's saying basically favorite mic pre's. Is it a Neve, SSL, or API? I like the API pre's, and what he likes is the API pre's with an SSL EQ. Also for the drum shells, that I didn't get. FET compression or optical compression.
Drum compression maybe. Um,
I mean, I would go
yeah.
honestly VCA.
Well, I mean,
FET.
yeah, I mean, which microphone preamp do you use for anything?
Yeah.
I think if I could only take one preamp with me
Yeah.
to the afterlife, would be a Focusrite ISA.
Oh, you like that one, yeah? Well,
It's
you remember I was telling you about I have a good friend of mine who works for Focusrite. He's got a big connection there.
he
So
was just on the webcast on Wednesday, right?
exactly, Simon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let
Yep.
me know. I'll link you up with him. He's well connected there.
Oh,
He's been selling all these red nets all over the world, dude. He's been in Abbey. He's worked with all the greats, and
I need a red zero blank rack panel if he can find one.
I don't know what that is, but shoot
Oh,
me an email. Shoot me an email, and then I'll send it to him. It's like, yo, hook the brother up,
all right.
And
And so for drum compression, when we
it
record
depends what.
drums,
Yeah.
well, yeah, when we record when I've been recording drums forever, and in the analog days, you had to use things on the way in. Like I would always use a 165A on a kick drum. I'd use 1176 on the snare, top and bottom snare. Toms, I would use DBX compressors, probably 165s. Overheads, I'd always use. So in the analog days, when you're tracking drums, you have to think, well, I'm not going to have an 1176 in the mix because I'm going to be using it for something else, because you only had 2 or 3 1176s in the studio.
But
So
don't you still think this way? I mean, when you have outboard gear, if you don't have plugins, that's how I think about it. Like I try to minimize the plugs and use this stuff here in the back. Or, can you show us a bit of your rack so that people would see what's going on?
Oh, yeah, we could spin the camera and I'll show you the rack.
Right.
So, all right, so let me just see if we want to come back to that great view that we have of the console.
There we go.
All right, so here's, I don't know how well you can see that.
Oh, I can see that.
And I'm going to try to, so
1073
when we're recording drums, I have this, this is made by Vintage Audio. It's an M12, which those are API 312s re-racked with this nice little push circuit right here, which feeds the transformer back into itself on a different tap and gives you a little more saturation. Great on kick snare. So there's no secret to this stuff. You can buy all this stuff on the internet. So for when we're tracking drums at dirt floor, here's our signal chain. Kick drum, snare drum, top, snare, bottom. We have a PZM under the snare, right near the beater of the kick, to give a little bit more of that sound.
So that Eric Valentine trick kind of thing, or
just like a crush mic underneath.
Right.
The Vintech 473 is for rack, floor, hi-hat, and room. And I think the hi-hat I've just moved over to the Focusrite. I have another Focusrite ISA 2 that I've been using for hi-hat and room. Right. Kind of phase the 473 Vintech out. Those are 1073 style.
Yep.
And then our overheads go through the Pacifica, if you can see down here. Yep. And those are the ribbon mics, the 4038 Coles on the overheads in the Glyn Johns setup.
Nice.
Yep. The Glyn Johns setup. So for the kick drum, we use a Shure Beta 91 which I was so skeptical of that, and I was doing
Kick in
live
or out?
sound. Kick in. That's
Okay.
it. The snare, it's a 57, a 451, the PZM mic down there. The rack floors are 421s.
Right.
The overheads are the Coles. The hi-hat is a Coles lip mic, LIP, lip mic.
Okay.
I forgot the number of that,
I don't know.
4081 or something like that.
Right.
That's what I use on hi-hat. And the room mic will just be a U48, I think, in figure 8 for the
Nice.
room, if I use a room.
Right.
That's it. So that's 8
all
or
I
10
need.
tracks of drums, not too many.
Yep.
Don't go too crazy.
That's great.
But there's other flavors. That's just what I've been using lately. Nothing wrong or right about it. I mean, you got all those 1073s. Why don't you use those? Well, if we're tracking a live artist,
Yeah.
we'll use 1073s for guitar amps,
Yep.
keyboards if they're doing live keys, and Focusrite stuff for vocals and whatnot. But that's just that's flavor of the month. I may change my mind.
But yeah, that's all you need. That's why I have a selection as well of pre's, and this is one thing. Like I was telling some people the other day, is like, what do you have? I got a nice set of different kind of pre's. And I said the first thing I did when I started getting all these pre's is I would slap my U47 up or a Coles 4038 and get my wife to sing example through. She's got a great voice, and I'd run it through each preamp and a different combination of mic, and I have this Excel sheet and get prepared for any artist that comes here, and I'd track that, and I'd put stars of like say, okay, this is good on her vocals, and then I get a male singer, this is good on his vocals with this combination preamp. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent, but I want to talk about the quickness of having an artist in the studio than sitting there and experimenting. Like example, you get a male vocalist, and he's kind of like a tenor or an alto or so. You got to know right away this guy's paying you by the hour, and you got to know your gear and know how they sound like in different cases. So I think for me it's important that prep work is to have these documented sheets, whether guitars, bass, or vocals or whatnot, and experiment all you get with all these flavors, with different compression, different combinations, just so when an artist comes in who's paying you by the hour, you hear his voice or her voice or whatever they're playing, all right, they need this, and let's go quick. And you might experiment with another mic, but not sit there and say, okay, we can get this, because I truly believe capturing the source really beautifully is very important, and committing to that sound. I mean, I work that way. Of course, there's many different ways of working. And as you said, to have different flavors and feel different things on different times, that's another perspective of it as well. There's so many ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Right. Well, if that's why I gravitate towards the Focusrite.
Yeah.
Neve has a little too much color, in my opinion. I mean, just all they got to do is sing like 2 dB hotter, and you overring that transformer, and it's like a little too much saturation. And that's why the Focusrite is very forgiving, loads of headroom, super clean. I love it. So I would, if I didn't know, if I you just drop a singer in here, the first thing I would go to would be a U87, a Focusrite 430, and the CL1B.
Done.
Because I know that I can get a good sound at least 95% of the time with that combination. And that's just my way of doing it.
Can I ask you a question? I've never used a CL1B. I've always been curious about it because I never had the chance. I usually run like a 1073 into my LA2A or another combination.
LA2A is great.
Yeah, and what's the sonic difference between like with a singer come in with the CL1 and the LA2A in comparison? Would you feel? Why would you gravitate towards the CL1 rather than the LA2A for a compression while tracking?
I have a little more control with the CL1B than an LA2A because the LA2A is just gain reduction and gain.
Right.
With the CL1B, you've got a threshold, you've got a makeup gain, you've also got attack release, and you have different ratios. Okay. So it's like an LA2A, but with a lot more control, and it just is super smooth. I mean, we just did a mix for an artist the other day, and he said, "Well, I don't have I don't have a CL1B plugin. I know that I think Softtube makes them, but we have one sitting in." And he goes, "Can I just put that on the vocal?" So we're mixing on the console because all the tracks that come out of Pro Tools go onto the console. So we just put a hardware insert on his vocal channel into a CL1B, and we just dialed in. And he goes, "Oh, that's perfect." And he was just blown away by it because he tracked the stuff at home and, you know, used the outboard that we had here.
Right. Oh, that's
But
great.
I mean, there's other, I mean, you know, if you got a rock singer, I mean, you know, you could a U87, sometimes, you know, just a handheld mic, a handheld Neumann 105 or a 58
Even a
or
50 SM7, you know, why not?
SM7. Yeah, those work really well for rock vocals, and you know, you want that 1073 saturation. So knowing that, we'll use that. And the last real heavy rock record I did, which is not out yet, but it's by Curse the Sun, and
Right.
all of Razi's vocals went through the Stam Child
Right.
for compression. So we used, I think it was a U87 Focusrite 430 producer pack,
Right.
which are these things down here. Producer packs, I have 4 of those. Into the Stam Child, and man, it was great.
Right.
So I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of the Focusrite 430, which I originally had the 110 130 modules. A producer sold to me in the 90s.
Right.
He was working out of my studio and had those. Those were his personal, you know, two of those EQs, 2 of those compressors, and I ended up, you know, will work for food kind of thing. So I ended up getting those.
Yeah,
And
fair
I've
enough.
just been, I mean, I'm just so used to that EQ, that you know, the ISA 110 EQ, and Plug-in Alliance, the plugin company,
Yeah.
Plug-in Alliance Brainworks,
Right.
they have the Focusrite SC plugin,
Right.
which I use all the time now because I'm so used to that EQ. It's like
You
I've been
know it.
using it. I know it. It's like some people know
That's the important part.
1073s are great
Yeah.
for guitars, and I mean, you can get stuff out of them, but I mean, I always say with a Focusrite ISA 110 EQ, you can turn a kick drum into a hi-hat. You really can. They're crazy.
Well, that's very important what you said, because I mean, I've
I'm
mentioned
going to
this.
change the view up here. I'm going to go back to the console.
Sure.
How about that?
I've always said, get to know your gear and understand, because each plugin or outboard gear or console is an instrument, and if you know how to use it really well, then you can get whatever you want. Doesn't matter what it is. So you just explained it right there. Steve, I'm just gonna. There's a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, let's open up for
chat,
some questions.
So, yeah, let me just. I'm just kind of read through them. The writing's so small. I need to just have a quick look. Always wanted. Okay. So testing facility. So Brent's saying he wishes there was testing facility here. Yep, me too, my friend. Electric Owl Works. Greetings, everyone from South Wales, New York. Hey, Electric Owls. All right.
Was I slurped my tea?
Brent loves the ISA. I think he's got one as well. Electric Works. Brent. Oh yeah, Focusrite preamps are really nice. Matthew Moulton, Focusrite software is great too. Love those plugins. I think you're just commenting on what we have. But don't forget as well, I think, wasn't it Rupert Neve, when, from what I understand from his stories, he started Neve, obviously, and then left that and then started developing Focusrite, or was it Focusrite as a company, and they asked Rupert Neve to come and design?
No, that was after Neve sold Neve to AMS, which
AMS.
this console is actually an AMS Neve. It's not not an Neve, but it says Neve on it. Yeah. Sounds great.
Well, it went through Rupert Neve, and AMS Neve, isn't it? The whole Neve works.
Yeah, I mean, even these 1073s behind me, those are AMS Neve 1073s. They're not the old, you know, the old things. But I mean, the tolerance of that old stuff, you know, you could, you know, you click over to 7.3K and you boost it up. You don't know if you're boosting 8K or 6.3K. I mean, the tolerance is just so wide on that old stuff, which makes it cool, which makes it unreliable, which, you know, I always say, you know, vintage equipment is only as cool as the repair bill. Okay.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
So to get stuff that works and sounds like 99%, I would take that over, you know, even these Focusrite 430s that I have here. And when the 430 came out, that's the producer pack that has the compressor, EQ, everything in a 2-rack space. I sold those original vertical modules, and Focusrite had those at the AS show, and I got delivery on 2 of those things to replace my vertical racks, which hindsight, I should have kept them. But again, those things, if you ever look at the interesting, there's a kind of a cheeky thing that BrainWorks did for their Neve channel strip.
Right.
On one of the instances, you can go with this total TMT total modeling technology, whatever they have. You can scroll through, and it just changes the flavor of each channel. But on one of the channels, there's a toothpick stuck in the button as a joke. But anyone who's worked on one of these old consoles knows that those Neve buttons would go bad, and in order for you to keep that EQ switched in, you have to
Stick
put
it
a
to
little screwdriver, a toothpick, or something in there.
right,
Same
right.
thing with the Focusrite. Ugh,
That's hilarious. That's funny.
nostalgia.
So Steve, on another note, with all this, the gear and the knowledge that you have and all that, this is an important question because you've been in the industry for a long time, and some of the guys out there, they want to know how to keep surviving and keep going with it. So I mean, it's a general question. You can answer the way you want to answer. Is like, what is the attitude, or how do you succeed and keep on going in such a business where you and I know it's a very up and down, very dynamic business, let's call it. How do you keep going, and what is the work ethic behind all of it, of where you are right now? Does that make sense? What I'm
yeah, I think, in general, you could call me an audio engineer, okay? A sound engineer. Okay, so there's different categories of sound engineers. Like, I know people who are brilliant live sound engineers. That's all they do is live sound.
right,
I know people who all they do is location sound for film and video. But
right,
that's all they do. I know
right,
people who all they do is A1 for broadcast.
right,
Because that's all they did, and that's what they fell into. I wanted to get a very well-rounded, um, uh, I don't know, take on my career, or the audio umbrella. I don't fix car stereos. I don't install home
right.
stuff, but I've done music recording. I've done mastering. I've done live sound for a broadcast television. I've done location sound for film and video.
Mhm.
uh, Live sound reinforcement. So wearing all of these hats keeps me
Active.
aware of, because a lot of stuff that comes out of the studio, obviously it goes to the live situation.
Yep.
So you have to, and by working in live sound, you've got to figure out things very quickly. There's a problem. There's
Yep.
no time to read the manual. You have to
Know how to,
know.
and know how to hear the room right away when you're in there. It's like, it's
So a
tricky.
lot, right? So a lot of the, learning from live sound helps you in the studio. Working in the studio helps you with live sound. Um, and sound is sound is sound. I mean, when I had a studio in Hartford in the '90s, I recorded a lot of voiceovers. I had a lot of corporate people come to me and say, "Hey, we have a meeting. Can you put wireless microphones on people?" Well, yeah, that's easy. I can
Yeah.
do that. And then you get into theater, you get into live broadcast, you get into sports broadcast, where the pressure is enormous, and I've seen people just melt under the pressure of live broadcast, and it's not easy at all,
Yep. Been there.
especially when you have a
Years.
director barking it, and you've done live so that pressure and the pressure of live sound to get things right and have no feedback, and all of this stuff really keeps you on your toes, and they all relate.
Yep.
And you can learn something from every aspect of the industry to help, when it comes to doing other parts.
No, that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear it from you. I mean, I was in that same boat for a while, and it's funny because you never. When I thought about, like, I think maybe we think alike in that sense. It's like when we thought about sound and music, because we love music. That sound, that means you got to cover a bunch of ground to understand what's going on. I'm personally, I never pigeonholed myself. I had to be on grounds as well, filming with a big shot. I hated that. That I couldn't stand. I did that with Nat Geo.
Wireless microphones are gone now.
Yeah, with a big mixer on your side and carrying. Oh God, I just
Yep.
hated it. I felt like such a shithead, But you had to capture the sound. In television, it was all right. I had my whole console there and the way it worked. Anyway, but it was always about the studio and live engineering. As you said, it's very tricky in knowing it. But being a musician, I was always very picky about how the stage needed to sound. Obviously, front of house and the monitoring world and all of this stuff. So it was a good combination, because when you're a musician, you're also a performer. you have to understand all these things, and it's great when you meet a band who understands that, and vice versa. Then you really work hand in hand together. And also part of it, I think musicians need to also this is what this whole program is about, is because a lot of bedroom musicians or bedroom producers and whatnot, and they want to put their stuff out there. So it's a great idea, as you said, is to go and experiment, go record live. Even if someone's just filming an interview, go learn how to use a mic over there. That'll help you in your bedroom or your home studio, whatnot, perceive things in a different way, look at things in a different angle. Does that make sense?
Right. And you learn a lot by working in the field. If you're recording someone who's speaking to a camera,
Right.
you become aware of, do you hear that dog barking? Do you hear that plane going by? Do you hear this? Do you hear that? So you train your ear to really focus on the voice. And how do you best get rid of all the background noise? So there's some of that where you really have to pay attention, and sometimes you have to fight, a mow and blow crew, or airplanes or whatever, or people who are in another room, and that helps you. Anything that you can learn about sound will help in any other area that you want to get in.
So there you have it. It's like keep an open venue in your head about all that. We got a question for you, Steve, from Electric Owl Works. The question is, when you had your old Toft console, you had a Toft console. I wanted to ask you about that. Did you ever track through it? Hope you, Eric, and your loved ones are all safe and healthy. Thanks. This must be someone who knows you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we had the Toft console, we never used the mic preamps on it. In fact, this console behind me, I've never used the mic pre's for microphones, because we have a great outboard selection here. We have a lot of mic preamps, but for the Toft, we never used it. In fact, the Neve right over here, the output, we have 32 outputs coming out of the Pro Tools, out of Apogee converters and 192 converters, and they show up on individual channels on the console. Right. And we are going into the microphone preamp that's on the console, not the line input, but the microphone. And so it's padded all the way down, and we're going through the microphone transformer. So we go through 24, let's say the left side of the console, we have 24, like think of it as a 24 track. So we're coming out of the Pro Tools, 24 tracks into the console, going through 24 transformers. We have 4 subgroups over here, which we usually spill out as drums, instruments, vocals, and my drum crush. Okay. And those are also in the transformers. Then each one of those gets an insert. So the drum insert goes to a 33609. So you got those green Neve Marinaires and their St. Ives transformers. Then the vocal bus usually goes to a DBX 162, an old VU version transformer. So and then the transformers are on the left, right of the bus of the console. That goes to the Stam Child. So my master bus on this thing, it's the Stam Child first for a nice soft compression, and then the SSL 4000 compressor.
Right. I do it the other way around. Yeah, exactly. But I'll tell you. Go on. And then what's your EQ at the end of it?
So, I don't have any EQ on the master left-right bus. I save that for mastering.
Okay.
Although if I get a GML, I might throw a GML in there, but I got to save up for that, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got the Better Maker mastering EQ. It was recommended by a friend of mine. So it's basically EQs in one. It's fantastic because it's got the Pultec kind of style EQ on top, and you can have the parametric underneath, so you can run them both simultaneously. And it's got MS on it. So it's nice. Super, and it's great. No artifacts, nothing. So I've been enjoying it. So the reason why I want to bring up the stereo bus, this was a question I wanted to ask as well. How do you do yours? I usually use I have a TK audio here, which is basically an SSL 4000. And what I do is, as soon as I balance my mix without anything, and I listen to it, and I try to get more of that kind of mid-rangey compression on it, like more, not mid-rangey, so less of the low end, less of the high end, but more in the middle, all around there. And then I have my IGS tube core, which is basically a Varimu, and I hit, but I don't hit this, like it doesn't even go into 3 dB a reduction at all. Like maybe it touches 3, maybe 4. That's when I know my levels are fine. And then I hit it into the tubes of the tube core with kind of medium attack medium release as well, no threshold going on, and then it just opens up my low end and my high end over there, and then I put it into DQ where I boost a bit of 30 or 60, like the Pultec kind of thing, and 10K and an 8K as well on there. So why did you go through Stam Child? What does a Stam Child give you before the SSL and or vice versa? How did you figure? And what on the Stam Child, what settings do you have it in? Like, do you have any gain? Is the needle moving, or is it just like barely on your stereo?
The Stam Child, what's great about the Stam Child, because it's a remake of the Fairchild.
Fairchild, yeah.
So on the Stam Child, which is rarer than a Fairchild, there's a low cut or what is a high pass you call it now.
Yep.
So it wouldn't compress the bass.
Yep.
You can dial it in, and then there's also a wet dry blend, which I always keep it at 100% wet.
Yeah, same here. Well, I have a high pass on at 220 actually on my SSL or that one, which
see
low end.
Yeah, my SSL 4K is the original Stam. Like
okay. Right.
Early stuff. So
Right.
there's no, I mean, the new stuff now, they got the high pass, they got the wet dry, like all the stuff that has the wet dry now is brilliant.
Well, yeah, it's parallel compression within a button instead of putting up another chain and stuff like that.
Right. And so the Stam Child does have the wet dry blend, but I like it on 100%. I just kind of tend to like that sound, and I keep it on for faster songs. I'll keep it on setting number 1.
Yep.
If it's a little slower, I'll click it to 2, and then if it's a really just like there's no drums, I'll click it all the way over to the slowest. Like I think it's 6 or 7.
Yeah,
6.
I like the 3 to 5 settings when I had mine. And I'll tell you a little secret about the Stam Child, because I had a few issues with it.
You told me, but
I'm not going to mention it, but unfortunately I had to send it back twice. But when we were troubleshooting it with the engineer out at Stam, great guy, one of these crazy genius guys. He's like, let's troubleshoot it. I opened it up, moved some of the jumpers around. He's like, this is how we're going to get the original Fairchild sound. You're going to miss out on the whole mix knob, and I think it was the high pass as well. Or was it just a parallel mix knob? I can't remember. And he's like, try it now. I tried it, and it worked. And I have to say, it sounded different than when the main issue I had with it was the balance of the 2 left, right, and channel. So I still had that, but when I plugged that in, it sounded, like what a Fairchild would, I suppose, would sound. I've never really used a real Fairchild just as plugins, but it sounded it. So give that a try, and it was a very easy mod. You just move a couple of jumpers inside. I can't remember which ones they are, but you can email Josh and.
Oh, well, our good friend Jeff Staley down at he's the East Coast repair shop for Stam, and I hooked those guys up. So I'll take that thing back. But when I got it, I opened it up, and there's this giant sticker inside that says Alto Mojo. Alto Mojo on the inside of the Stam Child. Like, ooh.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's great. It's a great unit. I mean, this is our Fairchild is Stam Child is 007. And I was hammering Joshua.
Right.
We're getting 007.
Dude, this is when I asked for 0013 when this is how we got to talking, actually, because you said 007. I was like, Josh, I want number 13. And he did actually send me number 13, funny enough. Wow. And I got number 13. I was like, okay, this was an unlucky number. Second one I got was number 34.
So when we first got this, I powered it up and it blew the fuse out. Like, right, like why? So I like, all right, so maybe shipping or whatever. I got another fuse. I think it came with a second fuse, or I had another fuse around same voltage. Put it in, popped it again, and so
2 different fuses. Bear in mind when he sends them, there's 2 different ones in there. So anyway,
right. So both fuses blew, and now it's like I've got this Stam Child, and now all right. So Jeff, we got to bring it down. He puts a fuse in, it blows. And then I guess like within a week, the word was these things are sneaking out and everyone's blowing fuses. So they came up with a mod that allowed the tubes to come up slowly. Right. So it wasn't just a rush of electricity in there and blow the fuse before you blew the tube. So it was a good mod. So again, what they're doing, they're putting the first units out. I mean, I would never be, serial number 1. I wouldn't want that from any manufacturer. But learning from your mistakes and how to make it better and continuous improvement, that's what they're about. They're not about getting things out fast, but that's the patience that you have to have when you buy a piece of stam gear. But the
Yeah,
build quality and sound is excellent.
it is. Yeah, I was just disappointed because both the units, when I sent the first one back and got the second one, more problems. And I was like, as you said before, I would rather get a unit, that's reliable and workable rather than have a, big. It's not the cheapest piece of gear either, but for a Fairchild kind of clone, it is amazing. The price,
Right.
but still not cheap. And I need something to work with, not just something that looks great. So
Mm-hmm.
I got a couple of questions here. We
Oh,
got
good.
Brent's asking, for Steve, what's the reason that you're going into the desk via the mic pre's instead of the line in? I suppose for the saturation of the mic pre's.
Right, because the console has and I can't think of the name of them. I mean, it's a division of Marinair. They have microphone transformers on them, so we just patted them down on the desk. You can just go to the mic gain, and I took all the phantom power buttons off, so you can't put phantom power on and feed
Right.
it back into the apogee. So you can, is there a sound? Maybe. Is there not? I just went with using the transformers because I've just been a transformer guy. I kind of like that
And
saturation
you
you
can
get out of it.
drive those, right? I mean, I don't know.
Oh
Like,
yeah, you can.
yeah,
Yeah, you could. I mean, we could take the gain up on the console and bring the gain, and
right.
gain
Trim it down then.
stage it differently, and we could drive it more if we need to. But right now they're
Whoops, Steve. Hey, bud. I think Steve's Wi-Fi's gotten a little bit slow. He'll be back in a sec. So, guys, I just want to thank you very much for joining in on this live stream. We're not done yet. We're definitely not done. I'll just wait for Steve to come in. I just want to say thanks for watching and asking all these questions. I mean, this whole channel is about building this community together to keep it alive. And, like now, I guess some people on the chat are getting to know each other. This is exactly what we want and what we need to happen. Hang on a second. I think Steve's coming back. Oh, he's still not there. I guess we'll hear his voice when he comes in. Just it would be great if you guys just subscribe to Bullfunk Studios YouTube channel. It'd be very helpful. I'll be doing more of this and more guests coming up. Some really cool guests coming up in this world of music and audio production. By the time Steve Wytas comes in, I guess I'm losing my train of thought here. So I'm just going to read some of the questions. Where it is. What's the reason for you going into the desk 5 preamps? Brent, I hope Steve answered your question on that. Let us know. And Electric Owl works. I know Eric have been to some dirt floor parties. Haven't had the pleasure of meeting Steve in person yet, though my name is Charles H. Root III. Ha ha ha. I'll let Steve know about that. I'm going to read that when he comes back on. All right, Electric Owl. I've seen interviews with Al Schmidt. Oh, what a dude. And Shelly Yakis. Fantastic. Where they say they prefer using inline XLR pads on mics instead of the pad on a preamp. Have any of you tried the technique? XLR pads on mics instead of the pad on the preamp. I haven't personally tried. I don't, it depends on the pad. I'll give that a go. Thanks, Electric Owl. Brent, works, haven't tried it, but it does sound interesting. Very cool. Always wondered if that would be something that would work, but always worried about unnecessary distortion. I like distortion. Why not? If you want that sound, fuck it. Go for the distortion. Brent, if I recall correctly, the reason for the inline pad is that they say many mic pre's lose frequency response and dynamic range when you use their pads. Interesting. Say learning from the best. Ooh, okay. I think we're getting Steve back. Oop, we've lost Steve. I'm interested. Then we're gonna try it. Subscribe now. Hey, thanks, Electric Owl, for subscribing. And also, I'm on Facebook, Bullfunk Studios on Facebook and Instagram. Check that out over there. and we'll take it from there. I'm not sure what's happened to Steve's Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, he's been cut off. We'll give him a few minutes. So at this moment, guys, if you have any questions or anything you want to talk about, please shoot it down on the chat, and we'll at least you and I will talk together. Have a drink to that. So my question to you guys, how you guys been spending your time during this lovely quarantine period? Have you been productive in the studio? Have you been working on some stuff? Have you been proactive, or have you just been chilling? All right, Steve's back. Here we go. Steve.
Now that we've lost all the fans.
No, they're there. We got a few questions, so I'm gonna rush into the questions for you because we don't want to lose you again.
Yeah, well, we have a squirrel that's actually running the internet connection for us up here, and I just had to give him a couple of acorns. It's terrible.
So okay, so we answered that question. Electric Owl asked before, I read this already, is like, I know Eric and I have been to some dirt floor parties, haven't had the pleasure of meeting Steve in person yet, though my name is Charles H. Root III. Ha ha ha. I think that's an inside joke. So that's for you. Haven't tried it. Okay, so they were talking about Electric Owl says he's seen interviews with Al Schmidt and Shelly Akis where they say they prefer using the inline XLR pads on mics instead of the pad on the preamp. Have you tried this technique? I haven't thought of it, but have you tried it?
Just going in line in instead of microphone in?
Well, I mean, I think from what he's saying, they prefer using the inline XLR pads on mics instead of the pad on a preamp.
I see. If you're recording with a microphone, but I think we were talking about before the squirrel stopped the internet here, that we're coming out of the Pro Tools system, line out into the microphone pre's on the console. So there's no pad on that. It's just gain. There's two gain knobs. There's, fine gain and heavy gain.
Right.
Bulk gain on the console. So those are both switches are turned all the way down.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, instead of using a pad on a preamp, if you can use a pad on a microphone,
right?
I guess. I mean, those guys are brilliant. I mean, they probably.
Shelly Akis.
Shelly's going to be on a live Facebook thing tomorrow night. I think on his Facebook Live.
Oh, is it? That'd be great.
He was great on the Gearcast podcast. He had a great story about going from mono to stereo, and the producer said, "Well, who's ever going to sit between two speakers and listen to music?" When they went from mono to stereo.
Right. Well, I mean, it's still great to mix in mono. I mean, that's the key, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely check your mixes in mono. That's because some things just full. They collapse if you're putting effects on them, like the effects collapse, or there's just not enough of it. So it's a good way to check it. Check your phase and all that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was talking to Andy Ward, it was the first episode we did. Andy Ward's a fantastic engineer, and he really mixes a lot in mono with one speaker. And then he's like, if you can do it on one, then you can do it on two. And then I got questions. Well, what about if you're panning things? Like, yeah, of course you can pan in mono, but bear in mind, if you're panning, example, guitars left, hard left and hard right, and in mono, what's going to happen? They're going to sit in the back when you hear them in mono. Do you know what I mean? Until you put them into stereo. So I think what they misunderstood was they're going to hear him the way they're going to hear him in stereo in mono. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Well, my old Neve console had a little speaker on it that if you take the left-right fader, you could assign it to go to that little tiny speaker and hear things that way. It was kind of cool. And then when I'm mixing now, usually with an artist here, is when I get it to be right where I want it to be. I'll say, okay, you sit in the captain's chair. I'm going to go into the kitchen and just listen away from the mix, just how it travels through the air, 25 feet away. Right. And I'll go in the kitchen. I'll go like, oh boy, those vocals are really too loud.
Yeah.
You'll hear things that you don't hear otherwise, as if you're playing something on a stereo system at a party.
Right.
listen to it in the other room and just, get an idea of how it sounds.
It also gives you an ear break. I mean, I do that all the time. I go to the kitchen, which is next door, and have a coffee, whatever, and it kind of bleeds through the drywall, or outside, or I use this little guy.
Oh, a little Bluetooth.
No, yeah, and I don't use the Bluetooth, but I just plug it in.
Oh, okay.
It's a little stereo. It's a little nice piece, and I always check the mixes on these as well. And I also have an old Bose Wave. I don't know if you've seen these, but these are.
Oh, that's my home stereo. I have a Wave. That's my home stereo.
Yeah. One sec, I think I lost signal here. Yeah, it's great to check mixes on that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So hopefully we don't lose our internet connection. If we do,
I think I've just lost my. 1 second.
I can still hear you.
You can still hear me, right?
I can still hear you. You sound a little garbled, but.
Hang on. I just because I moved my.
Now we've lost your audio. Now I can't hear you.
1 sec. Okay.
Oh, you had to reboot the Neve.
No, not the Neve. No, it's because I'm doing it on my laptop, not on my main computer. And when I moved the laptop this way, the Thunderbolt cable came out. So yeah. So we're back in business. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the questions again because you got. Could
I just say one more thing about monitoring and listening?
Yeah.
What I like to do and regardless of whether I'm mixing anything or if I'm just at home, is in a great way to test your mixes or just to listen to music, which no one does. I mean, people put, the little earbuds in and they're mowing the lawn or they're, on the subway or, the earbuds, right? I have a good pair of headphones. I don't even think they're good. They're $100 pair of headphones, Shure 440s or 44s.
You're used to them. That's great.
I'm used to them. I don't use them in the field. I don't use them in the studio. I just use them at home. So what I do is I'll transfer things over to my iPod. Yes, I still have an iPod. Plug the headphones in, turn the lights out in the bedroom, and just lay down, put the headphones on, no cell phone, no distractions, no lights on, where the rest of your senses are just kind of gone. There's no visual, there's no, nothing. All you do is hear things in your headphones and just listen to your mixes and then listen to someone else's mixes or listen to your favorite album in headphones with no distractions. You'll be amazed what you can hear when you hear things in headphones with no distraction.
100%. I mean, but that's in a way that should always be it when you're like doing the critical listening, I suppose. But that's a fantastic technique to do it in.
But even if you're mixing in Pro Tools, you're still looking at waveforms going by you.
I don't look at that. I try to, for me personally, I try to ignore that. I try to look at this, like, because my system is this way, so I have my screen over here, and I need to turn. So, I mean, you probably have the same thing. So when I'm turning like to compress something or to EQ something, your perspective of listening moves because your ear moves this way, and I started practicing then you have to, okay, does it sound good? Does it not sound good? Does it sound good? Does it not sound good? And then, do you know what I mean? And you're like sitting there, okay, like moving it up notches. Okay, is it coming? Is it coming? Is it going? Is it going? And then you turn back again. I mean, you get used to it, I suppose. Do you know what I mean? But so because of that distraction, I start pushing myself back to this side because I got used to hearing it from the side and ignoring the screen and just kind of like, not looking at anything, just keeping something that's not moving in front of my face.
Dialing, yeah.
Just dialing, exactly.
Yeah. So what we've been working on at Dirt Floor with Eric, who's the owner and producer and multi-instrumentalist and proprietor of Dirt Floor. I'm just the guest chief engineer here. During this kind of shutdown, I mean, we've been doing some remote mixing. There's been some clients sending stuff in, but we've, like, how do you keep your sanity? What we've been doing is we've done 2 cover songs, of one from Gary Wright and one from Bread from the 70s. And what we did is instead of covering the song, we covered it in a way that you would think if you heard it, it was right out of the 70s. So by using different microphones, by not using a distressor or not using a lexicon reverb, but using things that only would have been around in 1972 or 1975, those types of plugins that emulate that stuff. I mean, we have some of that stuff, but to knock it off exactly note for note, and that requires a lot of headphone listening and repeating things and really listening, like, what is that part, and really listen to it and try to figure out what's going on in a mix. It was kind of a cool exercise, and we're currently working on Lido Shuffle by Boz Scaggs. That's a tough one. That's a tough song to cover.
That's crazy. And what did you use for a reference to, to bounce off from the 70s? Do you have any songs in particular to listen to as a ref? I mean, what about these covers, by the way? I didn't ask.
The song was Bread, I Would Give Everything I Own. I think it's called Everything I Own. And then Gary Wright, My Love Is Alive. So what we did is in Pro Tools, we started it, we put the song, we just dragged the song in, put it on the timeline, and try to extract a click out of it somehow or get a tempo. And then Eric would just listen to it and play drums to it. And that way we'd stop it, rewind it, punch, stop it, rewind, punch, and then do the bass and stop and punch, and listen to the guitars and stop and punch. And I would mix it, and I'd go home and listen to it and say, you know what, that bass, it needs something else. So we would try to accurately knock off the sound of the guitars, the amps that they were using. It's a real exercise. I don't think you can do it in the 80s because there's so much stuff happening in the 80s you'll never get it.
So how did you approach the bass? Like, did you use a precision bass, a jazz bass, or something into what kind of?
It was a direct precision bass, and I think we have a Brainworks B15 bass amp knockoff, which sounds
UAD have that,
the UAD, yeah, exactly. So that, and it's amazing, and if you were to listen to stuff in the 70s or even the Beatles, that's 50 years ago. But the philosophy of mixing, and we have an old Ampex mixer over here, and the panning on it is left, center, right. You can click to the left, you can click to the center, you can click to the right. So listening to that Bread song, I'm listening, okay, the guitar is over here. When the bass comes in, it's panned about 9 o'clock. And it's not very bass frequency heavy.
They weren't that time.
No, and the drums were just very, the drums were just kind of playing along with the guitar. But to listen to those songs and think, wow, why would they put, no one would put a bass on the left-hand side, or put echo, vocal echo on one side only. But that's the philosophy that was in the 70s. So to mix that stuff now really trains your ear to think outside the box, if you can use some CEO speak.
It's funny because that's how it kind of started. And then you trained your ear to go outside of that box. Now we're going back kind of into that,
It's a real exercise. And I kind of put it, a friend of mine who's a copywriter, I said, well, it'd almost be like you trying to create a handwritten letter by a third grader, write in that language, write with those letterings. He goes, that's tough. I said, or it's like a chef. Tell a world famous chef to make a Big Mac with the crappy secret sauce and
Picasso's a big example.
What's that?
Picasso's a big example. That's how we got his cubism. He's like, I needed to learn how to paint like a kid. Like
there you go.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that we're doing now in our spare time. Just really drilling down to study recording techniques and sounds and instrumentation and arrangement of the 70s. The biggest arrangement thing that we found in the 70s is the strings come in on the second verse. Every 70s song, it's like, here come the strings.
Well, you know the story about the Wrecking Crew, right? The band, the Wrecking Crew, the good old Motown days. Mm-hmm. So maybe there was a band as well besides the Wrecking Crew doing the same band recording every artist's music and writing just like the Wrecking Crew, and they just use that formula possibly.
Well, I mean, if you look at the Swampers, as a backing band, or and Eric could probably discuss a lot more with musicians, but having that same, the Wrecking Crew, I mean, they did the Beach Boys records, they did Sonny and Cher, Glenn Campbell came out of that, Hal Blaine, the drummer. I think Sonny Bono played tambourine.
Yep. That's it. Okay.
Any other questions? I mean, I've got all afternoon. This is, nothing I'd rather talk about than geeking out with.
Well, let's go into it. let's go in. I gotta go up the ladder, man. You got a lot of good questions. There's a lot of action going on today, which is
Can I
fantastic.
show him my sign? Here we go.
Yeah. You want to tell him about that? Well, let's jump into a question.
Okay.
We'll jump into that. So I know Eric have been some dirt floor predator. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We're over there. Have you tried
That's
that?
Charles.
Yeah.
I'm gonna slurp some tea in between here.
Yeah, do it. Okay. Oh, I missed out on a few. Sorry, I have to kind of go through this. He's out in the middle of nowhere.
Let's go to the lightning round. Things that Steve only knows for 500, Assad.
So in the meantime, Desert Island gear. I know you have your ears. One piece of gear that you're going to take with you. It's a very Pensado's Place kind of question, but screw it. What one piece of gear, whatever it is.
Well, if you have a microphone, you can't hear it without speakers. If you have speakers, you can't hear anything without.
Well, have you ever watched the Pensado's Place?
I love Pensado.
Yeah, it's great.
I love saying Pensado.
Pensado. Him and it was great.
Plugins.
Yeah, and his Into the Layer and
I mean, in general, I mean a microphone, an SM57.
One thing, yeah. You know what? I was thinking about that today. Everybody, the infamous U47's been around. It's amazing, but if you really think about it, I think what made or break the whole microphone industry was the SM57.
Well, I would probably go with an SM58 because it's the same thing, but it's got that little ball on it, so you can use that as a water filter maybe on a desert island.
I used to use it as a kick mic when I used to do live shows and have another mic. I'd use it.
I've used them as drum overheads. I've used them to bang nails into things. I mean, they're SM. I mean, it's a studio microphone. SM studio microphone.
Yep. I never got into the beta for some reason. I just didn't feel right with them for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway.
I was doing live sound. We used 58s on vocals, and then I forgot. Someone said, the other band said, we got this beta 58. Let's try it. And I just couldn't figure out the gain structure. It was a different EQ pattern. You're just not used to that. It's like when you go into someone else's car, like you're so used to like where your steering wheel is and where that muscle memory.
So Brent says, welcome back, Steve. And seems that the Squirrel charges a hefty premium for mediocre service.
Well, like I said, we're lucky to have electricity up here on the mountain.
Yeah. So while you were gone, I was asking the guys what were they up to during this quarantine time. And Electric Owl works. During the quarantine, I've been mixing and mastering some client projects, replacing tubes, cleaning, etc. Fantastic. It's good to know that everybody's being productive and like yourself trying to understand how to mix 70s.
I got a broken headphone adapter I got to work on. There's my project.
There you go. I've got an old school boombox from the early 80s. I checked. So Electric Owl saying he's got an old. We were talking about mixing on different speakers and referencing and checking mixes. He's got an old boombox from the early 80s that he checks his mixes. That's fantastic. And Brent works awesome. Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts on corrective room EQ products like Mini DSP or SonarWorks reference 4? Brent knows that. Brent runs the SonarWorks really well. Doesn't fix a room but helps the listening position. Headphone version is nice too. Well, I got my general Jenny 1s, 8331s, and they came with this calibrating reference mic, which is actually fantastic. And you put it in, and it's just for a listening position. And it works pretty well, I have to say. I haven't used the SonarWorks, although Brent's always been pushing me for that. What do you guys at Dirt Floor do for that?
Well, I haven't used the Sonar, but I do have a mini DSP running in my mastering room at my house. So I have a big room in my house that I have. It sounds great, but I just put the mini DSP on there because, of course, you're reading stuff and like, wow, this thing. So I use that on my speakers, and I also the speakers we have here at Dirt Floor are the same ones that I have in my mastering room.
What do you got going on over there?
These are JBL 4326 with a subwoofer. So I have the exact same speakers at home in my mastering room. I used to have the mastering room in the other studio, but now it's at home, so I can work on things at night or first thing in the morning. Yep. And just in a different environment for mastering. And usually that's after I finish mixing an album. I sit on it for a week and then get around to mastering it. But these JBLs I've been using probably 15 years. And everyone, is like, well, how do you use those? Well, because I'm so used to them. Yeah, I know them.
Yeah. I mean, I've been using the Understands for a very, very long time. I was like, okay, enough. I need to get some decent ones.
Yeah, I mean, I've used to have NS10s and every other kind of speaker, Uris and KRKs, but I'm used to these, and these have a little software thing. You put a microphone up and it shoots tones out and does a frequency thing and then saves it and then sends the DSP to the speakers. So the speakers are flat in here to the listening position, but as you move around the room, I mean, we're in a log cabin. It's not designed as a acoustical perfect place. It's designed. It's not even really designed as a studio. It's a great hangout. And we record right in the same room with the console. And I know you're a fan of Sylvia Massey, how she used to have her console and the band would play in that same room. It's the same concept here at Dirt Floor.
I love that. Even I do it here. I track the vocals. Well, I don't have a drum live room, but I love it. It's nice to be intimate with the artist because you can easily talk to them and move them around and stuff, like instead of hitting the talk back and say, "Can you do that again, please?" With moving back 6 inches. You're just there, like you motivate them physically. Right. Your energy's there if you got the good energy, obviously.
Yeah, and everyone, all the band is right in the in the little kitchen area here. We've got the living room.
Yeah,
I guess you'd call this the great room, is where everything is set up in here.
So, I mean, coming back to the studio, Dirt Floor, we didn't talk much about Dirt Floor, and I'd love to talk about that for a minute.
I got all afternoon.
So for those of the guys who are watching, if you haven't checked out Dirt Floor, I put the links down at the YouTube channel. Just check them out. It's a beautiful studio out in the woods. It's one of my dream studios to have, is like somewhere out in the woods remotely, where you can have all the peace and quiet and just focus on the work and with the production.
No internet.
Well, I know. So how did this studio come about? When did you guys start it out? Or you said Eric started it out, and how did it all come about? What's the story behind it?
Well, I first met Eric in the early 90s. I was mastering a project for a band, and he was in the band of that project. So he was at my place in West Hartford, and then we just kind of didn't keep in touch. I moved down to this part of Connecticut in about 1999, and I think about mid 2000s, late 2000s, someone said, "Hey, there's that guy. He's got a little studio down here." And I can't remember. I think he started in 2007, maybe. So someone told me, "Hey, you should get in contact with him," and then found out that, oh, that's Eric, who was in the band that I worked with, and he had some smaller incarnations of Dirt Floor, and I gave him some equipment that I had left over because I built a studio in my house after I closed the commercial studio, so I was still able to mix and record some things.
Right.
And he wanted me to do some mastering on a project. He was sending it out, and he wanted to keep it local, so I said I could do that. And by the way, I've got all my gear left over from my other studio that I just never got around to selling on eBay, luckily. So I had a lot of that collection, and I said, well, let's, he was, at the time, I think it was 2013, he had a client of his that was looking to invest in the studio and bought a house, and we moved the studio there, I think in 2013. I think we were out of there in 2015 because the client who became we wanted him to be the studio manager, but he became the mascot and was just in the way of a lot of production. Just wanted to hang out with the artists instead of actually do anything for the studio. So we found this log cabin, and the driveway is a real deal breaker. And we have a documentary coming out, and everyone will talk about the driveway because in the winter, we've had to cancel sessions or meet people at the bottom of the hill with a 4-wheel drive vehicle and get them up here. Right. So we're pretty remote.
Adventure, then that's that adds to the whole story and the experience.
Right. If you're here unannounced, you're not supposed to be here.
Exactly. Well, that's good. So this is another question. Actually, I wanted to. What's something that you'd like to? You as an engineer or as a producer would like to work on that you have not worked on before? Something that you ever concocted, and like some kind of different kind of band and orchestrated. I don't know. Is there something you ever thought about that you've always wanted to work on and you didn't have a chance to work on?
It would be like, who do you want to work with?
It could be that.
Yeah, Tom Petty's gone, but so I've given up. I would tend to want to not necessarily work with an artist. I tend to want to work with another producer or another engineer. Like it's funny. I'm in the camp of Rick Rubin and Trevor Horn. I mean, it's like Chinatown and Little Italy. It's completely different.
Yeah.
But they're in the same game.
Yep.
Trevor Horn, he's synonymous with the 80s and the 90s and Seal and Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Rick Rubin, Tom Petty, and Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Yep.
Danzig. I mean, so many great artists that he's worked with.
Oh my God, I haven't heard Danzig in.
I mean, I can, one day I could just wake up and I'm just completely want to work with Rick Rubin or want to, work in that studio or that sound philosophy. And then sometimes I just want to go big reverb and just off the charts keyboards and go Trevor Horn or Steve Lipson. Another one of he was an engineer for Trevor Horn. He's a great producer in his own right.
Yeah, but I mean they're fantastic producers. I'm a big fan of Garth Richardson as well, and all these guys. My biggest hero or musical whatever it is has always been Frank Zappa. I'm a big huge Zappa fan. And it's funny you said that you were not you want to work with different people, and coming to the subject we were talking earlier, my wife's dad, John Broad, who's a fantastic guitar luthier, great musician, and we talk a lot about this. He's been watching this show a lot, and he's given me some really great insights on a lot of things. And there's something he told me which is in relation to what you're saying. You want to work with Rick Rubin, you want to work with these different people. You're not fussed about, you want to work with a different vision. That's what it is. And different visions come from different folks, different people. And, it opens up your eyes. So, and he said something to me which kind of stuck in my head, which is people working together create great things. Without people or anything that's, been produced with or not, doesn't mean shit. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because it makes a lot of sense, that's a great answer, I think.
Right. Side. We have a great little piece of paper that's on the side of the console over here. It says, please read. And it's from Larry Crane, who talks about magic. And, there's no magic in this audio console. There's no magic in a tube microphone. It's the magic. And we see it all the time. The magic is in what the artist has as an idea and what Eric can bring to it musically and arrangement wise, and how I can help bring it to the next level with mixing it and engineering it. That's where the magic happens in collaborations with artists and engineers and producers. A lot of times, and I say this to artists who are recording in their home studio or whatever, and they always say, how come I can't get that sound? And I say, well, it's the same way I can't play a guitar. I do my thing as an engineer. An artist does their thing as a musician. But when an artist is recording their own thing, they're playing half engineer and half artist. So they are compromising in one department to make up in the other. Like I have to pay attention to the levels. I can't play my guitar, or they're not paying attention to the levels and they're recording things really badly.
Right.
So, you gotta, I think everyone has their own job to do,
right,
and their own specialty that makes the overall product better than the sum of the parts is better than the parts, something like that. But it's funny that every different artist that comes into Dirt Floor has a different it's almost like going on vacation to a different part of the world. They have their own culture. The band has their own culture. They have their own it's like another language that comes in. It's a different culture that comes in every different artist, and you kind of get acquainted to way they work or their type of music. So it's fun. It's always interesting. There's always a new challenge with different artists, but we learn a lot from working with other artists, what can work and how to help them achieve their goal of creating music.
Yeah, I mean it's just one big, the mind is like a parachute. It only works if it's open. That's a Frank Zappa comment.
And you should have a backup too.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, this is the most important thing, I think, in music or in production, whatever it is as you mentioned, is the people, the vision. the learning curve, keep your ears open. You learn from within yourself every day, which is also self-development.
Mhm.
Your attitude, your work ethic, and also in reflection to the people surrounding you and what they're giving you as well. So there's no right or wrong. I think. I don't know.
Right.
No such
Well,
thing as right or wrong. You can pick up on anything.
Well, there are times when an artist will finish a project, or Eric will complete the instrumentation for a track that the artist is working on, and he'll listen to it and say, that guitar part wasn't quite right. I think it needs something else. And he'll, without even the artist being here, he'll try something different, and then say, "Hey, I've come up with something better," and send that to the artist, saying that I think I've made it better. Or I'll finish a mix, and I'll go home and listen to it. And I'll go, "Oh, the mix is still up on the board. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to come in fresh and
Right.
make those little tweaks and just keep perfect." The artist is not paying for it, but my name, Eric's name, and Dirt Floor's name is on that.
Right.
And we don't really want to let anything mediocre out. We'll go the extra mile.
100%. That's the way to go. That's the
Mhm.
work.
And it's good for the artist. It's good for your knowledge. It's good for your namesake. It's good for your art as an engineer.
I mean, if you think about it, we got into this because we love doing this, and there was money involved. Like, wow, we can get paid for this. Amazing,
Really?
fantastic. Yeah, you know what I mean. So, I mean, that's the key to it, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean,
Right. Well, it's do what you love and the money will follow. So I mean, this has always been my hobby
yeah,
since the since the late 70s, I should say,
yeah,
of recording things and listening to music. And I remember just staying up on New Year's Eve to hear the top 100 songs of the year with a little cassette deck. Like, oh, I know that song is coming up. It's like, and then just get that song and
right.
make those tape collections and
Yeah,
catalog that stuff.
exactly. We used to do that all the time when we were kids.
Yeah. Right. No, you
No,
don't have to go to, you just go to Spotify and get what you want. But I mean, that was a challenge. I'm waiting for that song. I'm going to sit and listen to the radio all hour because I know last hour they played it. They're going to play it again this hour, and just have that record button, that pause button ready, and that song comes on, you got it.
well, not only even when CDs or tapes came out, when we used to buy tapes, like when I used to buy a tape when I was younger, I'd listen to the tape inside out for a whole year. You start getting to know the music inside out, and you wait for
Mhm.
the song to come in. So there's that whole attitude of waiting for something and appreciating something and digesting things. Now- Nowadays, unfortunately, there's a lot of ADD stuff going on. Like within 15 seconds, no more enjoyment to the thing.
Right.
And
Skip to the next song.
yeah, exactly. Skip to the next song. Don't know about this. Like nobody wants. I always put out albums. I always believe in albums because an album is a story. It's a stamp of where you are at this moment. In
Mhm.
2 years' time, it's a different thing. But now it's all about singles. I'm like, okay, there's no story behind it. There is obviously a song will have a story behind it, but there should be a collection of like an album is like a collection of short stories put together. You know what I mean?
Well,
To make
the 70s had the 7-inch single. I mean, the one hit wonder. When were the one hit wonders? They were in the 70s. So the single was big in the 70s, and there's nothing really wrong with putting out singles.
unless
I'd rather have an artist put out singles
yeah.
one every other month instead of 3 good songs and the rest just be filler. And like, why am I just save those for the box set.
Yeah.
Just give us the good stuff.
Yeah.
Singles, and I think that's the way people kind of expect music today. And I think that might be best, that you hold off on an album. You can record the whole thing, but
Yeah.
just sneak out a single, another single, another single, and then maybe at the end of the year you put them all together as one package.
That's the right way to do it, but that's putting out an album. But there's some artists that just put out a single, 2-3 singles a year, and that's it. There's no album behind it. Do you know what I mean? The single's always been a way to promote an album. Anyway, I always look at singles when you release them. They looked at ways, okay, we're gonna release this single now, next single, and then drop the album. Just a promotion. But now now people are just releasing single, no album.
EP, I don't know.
EP. But I
EP.
guess it's changed that way. But when we were listening when we were kids, like the whole album was a whole story. And within the song was a complete adventure,
Right. Unless you had the A track, then you had to skip over to the track 2 and then listen to the rest of the song.
I'm not that old.
Well, we got an A track.
We got a couple of things. I need to read this. What's going on here? Really,
Uh-oh.
SonarWorks, or we're just using Sonar? Okay, they're still stuck on the SonarWorks.
Sonar.
Come on,
I
guys.
don't
You
use
have any more
SonarWorks.
questions going on? Just trying to see. I'm from Buffalo. Who's this? Electric Out. I'm from Buffalo. We have our own tractor with a snow plow to keep our long driveway clear. Ha ha ha. Well, that's talking about your driveway in there.
We need a gondola, I think, to get up here.
Gondola,
A gondola, yeah.
with a motor in the back, push you up.
Yeah.
We're using SonarWorks. Works well with the Sony MDR 7506 headphones in the listening position.
Right. If you're mixing in headphones, I think that's really good if you are working in headphones and you're working in the box and you're working on a laptop because I guess you can go to any room.
Yep.
If you're doing everything on your laptop, that's brilliant. Way to do that. I mean, I've been using 7506s since they were called V6s back in 1985 or 86. I think I've put my first pair on of those, and that's all I've used. I probably bought 30 pairs of them over the years.
$100.
Yeah, I mean,
Andrew Shep's use them.
I use them all. I mean,
I know they're all popular in all broadcast television, by the way. Everywhere, any broadcast, like I've been to 3 different TV stations, they all have 7506.
Yep.
I can get used to them personally because you got to know those ones. You know, the
Right.
low end is not so much there. I remember the high end is very shrill in some ways from my ears, the way I hear it. But you know,
but the thing is, you're used to hearing that. You've trained your ears to hear things on, and that's why people say, "Well, you're still using those 15-year-old speakers?" Like,
you know,
yeah, because I know them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get the latest, greatest, and then I got to correct the room, and then I've got to get used to new stuff. They just work. Like,
you just need to
don't
get to
fool with
work.
it.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. Okay, dirt floors, driveway is more like dirt and rock paths, so no plowing. This is from Matthew Moulton. Matthew Moulton laughs. Electric Owl says, "Back to the Future. It's like the 1950s again with singles." Yeah, suppose.
Yeah. Single.
Anyway,
any other questions from the field, or you want to? I mean, I could just stay here until I got to say, like, I got to go to the bathroom. That's it. No, but I'm good.
We're gonna wrap this up soon. I mean, we have to, because I was supposed to be like an hour and a half tops, where we've hit the hour.
Yeah, but these engineers can talk all day long about this stuff.
But we'll have to do another episode. That's for sure. Maybe we can jump on different topics, so go into little deeper topics, do some sections of things. I don't know where this is gonna go, but we're gonna make it go somewhere. And I think the best way to do is for all these people to ask what they want to see and what they want to hear and whatnot. We can take it from there. You never know.
Right.
No?
Well, musicians and artists, they don't care. I mean, they don't care about a Neve console. They don't care about what microphone we're using. They really don't. They couldn't. In our studio, Dirt Floor caters to artists, not to producers and engineers. If we cater to producers and engineers, well, then it's a whole different thing.
Well, you'd be out of a job. Who are you recording? What are you doing?
Oh, there go the logos. So artists, I mean, the first thing you see when you come into Dirt Floor is the guitar room with 20 different guitars and amps, and there's keyboards everywhere, and it's I call it an amusement park for musicians. So like all the rides are included. You can go on the Wurlitzer ride, the Rhodes, you can go on the drum set, but people don't care to see how the roller coaster actually works. They just want to go on the roller coaster.
It's not their job.
How it works.
That's your job to know how it works. Yeah,
exactly.
But it's for us. This is the community for us. Because we enjoy how it works, and preferably as well on the other side.
Yeah.
But again, coming back to people working with people and what you said as well, I think that's very important. And
collaborations, it's tough to how can you just mix stuff by yourself? How can you just be an engineer without creative stuff coming in? It has to be created in order for you to work on it. And the same way, I mean, you can just busk all day long on Facebook, but if no one's watching, what's the point? I mean, you do it for yourself, I guess.
I got a question here from Matthew. He's like, anyone have experience with Antelope Interfaces? I have never used them, so
I don't. But I think I was gonna, because when I went to Pro Tools HDX, I think there was a problem with our Rosettas, and I worked out the problem, but I was like, oh, I got to figure something out here. And I was going to go with those Antelope Orion 32 IO. Yeah. I haven't used them. I'm sure anything that comes out today is not going to be bad.
No.
There's no piece of TIAC. Well, maybe Behringer, but even Behringer's getting good.
Behringer, no. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, there's no PV. There's no PV anymore. There's no TIAC. There's no that you could beat up on.
Well, when I was growing up, my dad had a TIAC tape machine.
Yeah, I mean, we have a TIAC 4-track machine here, a
Yeah.
3340.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good.
But there's everything that comes out today. I mean, the quality of everything. Even as cheap as you can get a Mackie board, still, I mean, there's got to be something cheaper than Mackie, right? Behringer or Alto or anything is still miles better than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
100%. The converters and stuff.
Converters, yeah. I mean, even a little, like I'm using an Avid M box for my headset mic. I don't know. I think it sounds crappy. I don't have a big Neumann in front of me.
It does the job.
It does the job, right?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so all right, hang on. I'm getting some comments here. Matthew wants to get the Goliath next. Now, the only thing about the Antelope that didn't put me off, but put me off because they're coming up with something very interesting. I have a good friend of mine. He's an engineer producer. He's got a great studio, great outboard gear and whatnot. And he told me they got a new Antelope coming out next year where you can patch in kind of like the Burl mothership, where you can patch in as many channels in and out. So you can have up to 96 channels in and out on a 3U rack unit, which is crazy, But then again,
how is anyone using 96 inputs?
I don't know. You can.
I mean, when we're tracking a live band here, we're maybe using 20. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think for mixing, right? For mixing.
I mean, stems. I mean, we're using 24 outputs, 26, 32. 28, 32. I mean, 90.
With the auxes. With the auxes. Well, actually, no. I mean, we're talking. I get tracks. I had a session the other day. I got tracks about a little over 200 tracks, but then I had to break them down and I consolidate them all to about 32, and work within my.
Right, you got the stereo conga, the under conga, you've got the room conga. You've got
but it's a pain in the ass. It's like, dude, just pile them all up.
Well, I could. So if an interface has a lot of inputs and outputs, I'm wondering if you could actually patch in your hardware and like make it part of your, almost like an effects insert. So if I want to insert a real LA2A into my Pro Tools session, that 96 IO. You can send a patch out of, track 94 and then have it return on 94 with an LA2A, and that becomes a hardware insert within the DAW. Yep. I think that could possibly.
I mean, this is how I kind of running my stuff. So I have certain auxes which are okay. Like I have my kick snare crush. I do a parallel kick snare crush. I got my pseudo compressor Fatso in there. No, and this one I use it if I needed the IO. And these are my stable. This is on my rear bus. I have a FET compressor here, the Dakin one. So I run all the music into that as parallel if I want to push out, except the drums, sometimes bass, sometimes no. LA2A is running right now, but I'm running through an analog summing mixer, which has the SSL transformer, and it's got a switch where I can switch out the transformer to run a pair of my Neves or my Manleys or the Dakin or whatever, get a different flavor. But the SSL one in there is fantastic.
So that's probably where that's probably where you would need a lot of that IO on a DAW interface to keep your hardware patched in at all times.
Yeah, exactly. And what's nice about it, like I think that, and I also use them as IO. That's why I have all the little spaghetti wires going on there. Have the little options, but I want to minimize those options. Okay, that's all I have on my bus. That's all I'm going to use. There's nothing else. I'm not going to jump through different things. I know the sound of this. That's it. Just like, you know what I mean? Right. And it helps you commit and create that sound out of it. You don't have to go through a million plugins. Like, just get to know one or two compressors and your plugin chain or whatever it is. See if they sound and how they sound, and the EQs and whatnot. And my technique is all this hybrid mixing. Obviously,
right. Same here. Yeah.
I for EQ. Not as flavorful EQ. I call it correctional EQ. I use the Fab Filter Pro Q3. Fantastic.
Q3 is that's the Desert Island plugin.
It's fantastic.
That thing is brilliant.
One thing I haven't messed with it yet is the dynamic EQ in it.
Oh, I use that all the time.
Yeah, I'm still using the C6. The Wave C6. Okay. So, but I need to look to that one. Try it.
Yeah, the dynamic EQ on the Q3, I mean, I use that all the time with, because you can see in that purple outline, So you can see where the harsh frequencies are, especially vocals like the 2K and then the S's. So you can turn that Q3 into a de-esser, and as well as doing broad EQ cuts, corrective cuts.
I haven't tried that. I've just been using it as a regular EQ. I need to go in. I kept thinking you need to side chain it with something else,
No, you
really?
could, but
Yeah.
but use that dynamic in a certain band is great. I mean, on
So
drum overheads, you can do that.
Right. So where do you change it to a dynamic? I mean,
Oh,
I haven't looked into it because I had the Pro Q2.
that's
So for you ladies and gentlemen out there, RTFM, Mr. Steve teaches some classes, or
no, I don't.
it doesn't teach classes.
If I did, that's what I would put on the board.
Read the fucking manual.
It's just a little knob. It's just a little knob in the gain section. There's like an outer ring that you just pull that down.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Because I'm so used to using the C6 when I'm doing this. That's like I'm used to it. I haven't tried it with the Pro Q, but I love it as an EQ. It's fantastic.
Oh, the Pro Q is. I mean, that's in my. Every mix has a Q3 on it.
Do you know, by the way, what's a nice piece of gear that I bought? I'm super happy with is this Phoenix. I can't know if I could show you here. This is the Phoenix channel strip. It's a dual. It's a 2 pre's and 2 EQs in there. So I use it on my guitar bus for the EQs. It's fantastic, and it's a great preamp. It's not that expensive for 2 of them. So just thought I'd share it with you. And this is something, really nice, really nice.
I think my for this mix that I have up on the console here, I'm using 2 1176s strapped together for my instrument bus, but the bass is not going there. The bass is going directly to the LR.
Right, so we're kind of doing the same thing. That's why I'm using the Dakin Fet 3. Dude, this thing, you know what I love about it? It's got this knob, which I haven't seen on any plugin. It's a stereo to dual mono. See, I'm rotating it. It's all the way to clockwise is a stereo, and then you can rotate it like a potentiometer, all the way to dual mono or in between. Yeah. Jeff Dakin, man, he's a genius, I'm telling you. Like in between sounds even to 1 o'clock. You just get that punchy bass and low end. I don't know what it does. It just does something really cool. It's a clean Fet compressor, but you can get it dirty. So that's why I have it running on my rear bus. And the only thing is, like, one of my channels is a bit off the other one, so I always have to run
well, just hit the side of it.
Yeah, well,
hit it a couple
I
times.
don't look at the dial. I just, like, before I calibrate it, so I run a test oscillator in it, and I just calibrate the volumes and everything, which is a pain in the ass because these knobs move so quickly, and I keep hitting them all the time.
Every time I'm mixing, I have to put test tone up on all the channels and stereo channels, and then zero out the buses, and I have to get in there with a little screwdriver into the faders, and
I mean, you do that.
That's analog. Everyone loves analog.
I enjoy it. I completely. And the other day with Andy's like, yeah, who wants to do recall sheets? Well, it's so easy. Just take pictures of them. Yeah. And what I do, like I've been doing these mixes, and 3-4 different alternate mixes. So what I do is I just take pictures of all the units I have ready to go, and have like an Excel thing. Okay, on guitars, so I'll take a picture of it. Done. Bass done. Bass done. Pop it in there. Put it in the session. Open it next day. Recall it manually. No problem.
But looking at a picture, you see like the knob is between 5 and 6. Like, was it closer to 5 or is it closer to 6?
It's how you take the picture. See, that's I would like.
Got to be a photographer now.
Yeah, example on this unit, because both the dials, they're all calibrated, but the knobs look different, right? So I actually take close-up pictures when I know it. Like, you got to know your units and you know how they work. So I just take close-up pictures and I know where it is. Or I have this. Where is it? I have a white Sharpie.
Oh.
And yeah, it's a great white Sharpie. It's kind of like, and it dries up, but you can also scratch it off. So I'll just point it to where the knobs are and just draw it in there, and you barely can see it. So it's super helpful. Yeah,
very good. Very good.
You got to get the thin tip though on the top. You don't want that big smudgy thing doing its thing,
So do we have any other questions?
Do we have any other questions?
People tired of listening to me yakking?
Fab Filter Pro Q3 dynamic use amazing, great on the mix, bus, and mastering too. Yes, indeed.
I used to correctively
generators are you gents using? Any test on generator. I mean, I test on 440. Everybody's on 1K. I just go 440.
Yeah.
I just do it because it's
it doesn't really matter for tone as long as it comes up as 0 on the channel.
Yep.
I tend to keep things like, I don't know, 200, just so it's not so, ow, ooh, 2K comes,
That's why
1K comes up like
yeah,
cranked, you know,
I know.
it's
But I just
440 is good. Yeah.
no, I just mute when I'm doing it. I was like, okay, it's there. I mute it. But I
Right.
think that's the way. I think his question is what test tone generators. I just use the Logic one.
I'm using Waves emo generator in Pro Tools, and the console has a test tone oscillator. My phone has a test tone oscillator.
Right.
Yeah.
It's whatever works.
You don't have to bias a tape machine anymore, thank God.
Yeah.
You know, this is just, I mean, I'm just zeroing things out for the console faders, because when we mix, we basically zero out the console and put all the faders at 0. All the subgroups go at 0, and the left right goes at 0. So I look at every gain stage through there, because on the stereo faders, you've got to get a little tweaker in there, and the stereo fader has an adjustment for left and right, what it feeds the bus. So every mix, I have to make sure that that's calibrated, because the analog stuff moves.
Yep, 100%. Yep. Even my summing, like it's about, you'll always get a variety. Like I get like 0.3 of a decibel one off the other one, or 0.2, and you try to get them as close as possible.
Close enough for rock and roll, right?
It's close enough, right? And then you just stop the mix and you mix it. You open the mix next. You haven't touched anything, and now it's 0.4. Yeah. They just move. Well, I'm like, I haven't touched you, god damn it. You know what's going on, you know? But
yeah. Well, I noticed that one of our channels on the console, when I like, the toms seemed to be panned heavily to the right no matter what I did. And it was just the toms because they come out of tracks 3 and 4 on the console. Right. So I put the test tone up. Yeah, they're good at 1K. Then I started bringing the tone down. Channel 3 started losing the low end.
Oh.
So the volume was there at 1K, but when it started to go lower, so I had to pull the channel out, had to recap it, and then it's back. You know, so that then you've got analog channels that are going bad, and that's just the nature. That's the nature of owning a big console.
Right. But it's working. If it sounds good.
It's working. It sounds great. And honestly, working quickly on a console tracking a band.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. Like, I just need to move a fader. I need to do this EQ real quick. Aux sends to external reverbs very quick. I can just dial up something on the lexicon on the. We got an H3000. So to work on a console is great when you're tracking. Mixing, it just sits at 0. It's a giant summing box. Is all it is, really. You know, with meters on it.
Do you know what's helpful? I got the only Behringer thing I got, which sometimes I hate though, is this X Touch. So I got 24 channels. It's one big mouse. Honestly, it's been super helpful because I can do and if I need to do, use the plugins inside, I have these potentiometers, the meters upstairs here, up here. I can move the plugins if I need to EQ. I usually use the SSL Waves EQ on top as well. And it's great to push faders up, in and out, and it just moves with it, you know, and
right.
Helpful for mixing rather than mix with the mouse, you know.
Right, and we have a fader master, an 8-channel fader master, Presonus,
right? Yeah,
which connects by Huey to Pro Tools. So an example of that is, I think we had an artist in, and he had, I don't know, 6 guitar tracks,
right?
And I'm moving things with the mouse a little here, and I said, you know what, here are the 6 faders. You get your mix where you want it. And he was, instead of him taking the mouse and doing that, you put the faders right in front of him, and the artist can move things around.
And for automation, this is super helpful for automation, because everybody has their own way.
I'm still a rubber band guy, like.
Oh, are you? Well, you know what I do? Like the other day, I was doing a mix. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna mix like this. I'm gonna automate like this. So what I would do,
the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, the old-fashioned way. So you're moving and you're touching it, and I love it because you're performing with the thing, and like you're moving with it. You're moving with the groove, like whatever the singer's doing. And every instrument I still automate, even if you do minor moves throughout the whole thing. Like I'll do a whole pass automating. Hopefully it works from the first pass. It just moves the song even a little. It's all about subtleties, isn't it?
Yeah, and I can't figure out touch latch. I just can't figure that out.
Well, it's just so basically, if you have it on read and you go into automation,
I
Just
writing
touch.
the faders. I mean, I used to do that, when you'd have four or five people at the board, like you have to do this. And at this point you have to do that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of over that. It's like cutting a lawn. I don't have a lawn anymore. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to move faders.
But it's there.
But yeah, I mean, the fader surfaces are brilliant. And,
Yep.
we have one. I don't use it very often. Like I said, if an artist wants to tweak things and they don't want to, click around on a mouse, I give them the fader surface.
My only biggest problem is with this is sometimes I'd be mixing and I'd move like channel 6 and somehow channel 44 moves down. Have you had that problem? And I've done it a few times and I was like, oh, for fuck. And then I have to sit, what the hell happened? And I have to sit and sift through it all. And just the way it's just the way they read each other and stuff.
Yeah, you have to bank down. And then if you move something over in Pro Tools, then it becomes that fader. It's a little confusing, but
even when I bank down, it's like if I touch 6 and it's got 24 tracks here and then it'll just jump off and the other one I hear go down. I'm like, what did I didn't even touch you, And I have to sit there and figure it out. And you're like really in the middle of the mix and you didn't want the congas or whatever, the shakers to be turned down.
Right.
Well, I think we got other question here.
I like using Pro Tools clip gain a lot. If we're getting rid of breaths, just bring that breath down a little bit.
What's
in between.
What's your staging? Like now I get sessions. I try to get. I know even though I'm going into analog summing and all of that, but I just gain stage everything at like -16, as much as I can.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if stuff comes in, I usually take all the plugins off.
Yeah, without
all the faders at 0, erase all the automation, and just start from scratch.
That's exactly how I do it. But I'm saying when you get if you get files that are like they're almost at like -3, -1, something clipping.
Yeah,
so
some things are really hot, and some things are.
Yeah. So I use clip gain as well, and I use Logic mainly because I'm used to it. I started on Pro Tools, but then I got sick and tired of all the fucking updates they have and make you charge you for bouncing. I'm like, you know what? Screw you. I'm using Logic. So that's I went down to Logic and stuck there. But I use the clip gain just like if something's at -1 or +1 or whatever it is, I just push everything down to about average of -16. Get a nice and all the faders are at 0. And then I start working from there.
Yeah, and I can usually, I mean, if you see a vocal and along the timeline, you can see where they're singing louder or softer.
Oh yeah. That's
so you can just
visually as well. Yeah.
Cut that and bring it down, just to kind of get it in the ballpark, roughly the same.
Yeah, you start getting to know it visually. Yeah, which is pretty cool. But one thing I like about Pro Tools, which I missed the edit functions, is that clip gain. So you can just go into the clip right away and just turn it down. In Logic, you have to go to the left upper hand corner. It's not that bad, but and you just get it from there, which is fine. Yeah. So we got I think we got a question here. Has the X-Touch, I was looking into those, or the icon protocols control surfaces? Okay, that's a question for that. Well, to be honest with you, I'm the wrong person to ask. I did the whole research on the what a PreSonus fader port and all that stuff. I loved it. I didn't use it, but I saw it in the shop. The only thing I wanted in is all the pan knobs on top of each channel, which is because I do a lot of panning. I don't want to work with just one pan knob. And I read about the Icon Pros, looking into that. With all honesty, the X-Touch gave me a lot of problems when I set up because I have 3 of them. So I wanted with the extender. Steve, are you there? Not sure if Steve's still there.
Yes, I am.
Oh, there you go. Your picture's gone. Sorry, I'm just answering his question. I had to go through a couple of days of research. It's connected by Ethernet as well, not USB. If you're going to do USB, get one piece only. If you're going to get an extender or something else, they don't start reading each other properly. It's a big mission. Anyway, so I mean, in the end, it's up to you, but it's really helpful to have something like that. And I would start. I mean, it depends what you're using. X-Touch seems to be working fine with Logic. As build quality, the PreSonus seem to be built nicer, but the transport section seems to be smaller. Look, honestly, it's a matter of taste, I suppose, Matthew. And Electric Owl, okay. We have the QCon Pro Q2. We love it. You can write automation on multiple tracks at once. Okay, cool. Matthew Moulton, Charles, that's awesome. I usually focus automation on buses to simplify the workflow and so forth. Cool. Well, Steve, I think we've passed the 2-hour mark, and I think we'll have to do another episode. And
geek out. Everyone is bored. Everyone's bored out of their brains.
I think it's time for everybody to go back and make some music right now. Enough talking and stuff.
I've got to keep mixing this afternoon. Yep.
Yep, you do that, and good luck with that. Anyway, let's stay in touch, and really thank you very much for joining us here. It's been a pleasure talking to you and talking gear, and
I appreciate being on the show, and everyone who's asked questions. I appreciate the questions, and obviously anyone can find Dirt Floor and ask questions that way, or I'd be happy to answer questions for whatever anyone has, I'll answer.
Well, you can as soon as this is done, you can always jump in on this episode tomorrow, whatever, when it loads up, and there's
on the chat.
Yeah, on the chat, and if we've missed things out, you can just answer it there on the comments and stuff like that. So guys, the links are going to be in the description section for Dirt Floor Productions on their Facebook, on their Instagram, and also Bullfunk Studios Facebook, Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you can, and also to Dirt Floor. And anyway, thank you so much everybody for watching and participating in this chat. It's really been fantastic. This is the longest one we've had so far. We just had too much fun. And Steve, thank you very much for joining us on this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, if you need anything, give me a shout, and we'll talk soon. Let me know if you need anything from Focusrite or what's going on, blah blah blah, and I'll send you the link. We'll chat later, man.
Thanks.
All right. See you later. Take care. Good night, guys.